Morning, everyone. I'm Max von Holwick. I'm the Chair of the Joint Audit Committee of the New York City Municipal Water Finance Authority and the New York City Water Board, and I will now ask Deb to call the roll for the meeting.
Conducting a roll call. Max von Holwick,
I'm here.
Sullivan Southwell,
Alvin Southwell for Basil Tagos.
Jonathan Golden,
Present.
Mark Shaw.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thanks very much. First item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which was in May 26th of this year. Those have been circulated for everyone's review. I would ask if there are any comments or corrections. And if no one has any, I would ask for a resolution to approve those minutes.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? In which case, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Southwell?
Approve.
Mr. Golden?
Approve.
And Mr. Shaw?
Approve.
And I, too, approve. The minutes have been approved. The next item on the agenda is the presentation by management and the independent auditors regarding the audited financial statements for the fiscal year 2022. I think most of you know that Rob Balducci, the authority's comptroller, had retired earlier this year, and Namika Sharma, the authority's deputy comptroller, will now introduce the independent auditors, Grant Thornton, and present the system's audited financial statements for fiscal year 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. This is a collaboration of the Water Finance Authority and the Water Board, and a great partnership with the auditors. And as such, I want to thank a few individuals. Olga Chanet, Joe Murin, Omar Nassim, Robert Balducci, our retired controller, Meng Ji, Rebecca Chang, and the auditors. It was great working with everyone. Thank you. Before I pass it on to the auditors, I would like to give a brief overview of the activities that happened during fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. The water and sewer operating revenues increased by $223 million, or approximately 6.1% compared to fiscal year 2021. The non-operating revenues decreased by $5.6 million compared to fiscal 2021. And the overall revenue increased by $217.4 million in fiscal year compared to 2021. The operations and maintenance expenses decreased by $112.4 million. This is comparing to fiscal year 2021. And the other operating expenses decreased by $38.7 million compared to fiscal year 2021. The authority issued $2.5 billion in bonds, of which $1.5 billion was used for refunding. These refunding transactions resulted in a gross present value savings of $447 million. The authority also legally defeased approximately $234 million of outstanding bonds using current revenues, and reduced its debt service by $295 million. The authority transferred $1.66 billion to the city for construction costs. Restricted cash, cash equivalents, and investments at the end of fiscal year 2022 was $2.6 billion. Total capital assets, net of depreciation, increased by $533 million. This is a net result of additions to QIP and the recognition of $1 billion in depreciation expense. Myself, Olga Chanet, Joe Murin are here to answer any questions you may have on the financial statement.
Explain to me.
So one quick question I had is a comment and a question. kudos to you all on defeasing all the debt and reissuing replacement debt. I think it's wonderful that we're able to achieve that savings. What do you foresee in terms of how rising interest rates are likely to affect the debt service picture going forward?
I will give
Maybe
that to
let me
Rosa.
take this question. There is no question that the rising interest environment is reducing our refunding opportunities. And we unfortunately seen this already, have been monitoring approximately $288 million for refunding this fall. And right now, it's barely meeting our 3% savings threshold. So the market environment is very kind of choppy, I would say. There is a lot of volatility. We continue to monitor outstanding portfolio for savings. It appears that, at least in the near future, those opportunities will be greatly reduced relative to the last few years.
Thank you. Thank you.
There are no other questions. I will now turn it on to the auditors for their presentation.
Great. Good morning, Joint Audit Committee member. To be with you this morning. It's a pleasure to present the results of the fiscal. By way of introduction, my name is Nick Lazarulo. I'm the audit partner for this engagement. I'm joined by David Brockman, who is our audit manager. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through our formal results presentation. External auditor. I know that you guys have been presented with these materials in advance. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover the key points. We open it up to any questions that anyone may have. I'm going to first prompt everyone to take a look at presentation in PowerPoint, and we'll be following the page numbers on the bottom right hand page. And so if we turn to page 1, just want to reiterate what our responsibilities were for this engagement. So we performed an audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, as well as government auditing standards of the combining financial statements of the Water Finance Authority and the Water Board, collectively known as the New York City Water and Sewer System, or the system. And that's referenced throughout this document. And as part of our audit, we issue an opinion. And with described, we include our opinion, which is an unmodified or clean opinion based upon the results of the audit procedures that were performed. In addition to the audit procedures within the combining financial statements themselves, we are also required to read the other information included within the financial statements, which is the management discussion and analysis, as well as the required supplementary information, to ensure that it is consistent and ties into all of the books and records and information that we audited in terms of being able to render our audit opinion. We're also required and responsible to communicate any fraud or abuse that may come to our attention during the engagement, any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls over financial reporting, or any material non-compliance as part of the overall engagement as a whole. So if we turn to page 3, that begins a discussion that reiterates what our significant risks and areas of audit focus were. And as the committee recalls, when we presented our audit work plan, we presented these risks as our work plan to ensure that the committee was aware of where we would be focusing our procedures. And I'm happy to report that based upon the procedures that we performed, we did not need to change any of the significant risks that were identified as part of the planning process. So just as a reminder, we focused on revenues. So both the billed and unbilled revenues and receivables, We performed substantive testing on those balances. We also performed controls testing on those balances, and we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies with regards to revenue recognition. On the following page, we also focus on the valuation of the investment portfolio and derivative instruments, the utility plant and service and construction, and the bonds and notes payable, and performed all of our procedures that enabled us to be able to sign off and say that we had the appropriate evidence to render our opinion. On page 5, we also pay attention and test a sample of expenditures to make sure that they are reasonable and accurate and following the appropriate controls that are designed within the system's overall internal control structure. And then when we receive the draft financial statements from management, we review those statements in entirety to make sure that they contain all required financial statement disclosures. And so within these financial statements that have been presented as part of the presentation, we noted a full, complete, compliant set of footnote disclosures. So there are no omitted disclosures included within the combining financial statements. On page 6, in addition to the financial statement procedures that we performed, our audit team also consists of information technology auditors who go in and look at the design and operating effectiveness of the financial reporting systems that essentially comprise the combining financial statements of the system. And those procedures yielded no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to note. Then on page 7 of our presentation, this is our required communications. And so these communications formally discharge our responsibilities as your external auditor. And so I need to go through each one of these matters explicitly with you, and please stop me if you have any questions. So we did not note any going concern matters during the course of the engagement. We did not note any fraud or non-compliance with laws or regulations. We did not note any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls over financial reporting. We are not aware of the use of any other auditors as part of this engagement. We are not aware of the use of internal audit for purposes of this engagement. Related party and related party transactions are reviewed to ensure that they're occurring at arm's length, and we did not note any issues or adjustments relating to any potential related party transactions. There were no significant unusual transactions to note that we came across during our audit procedures. We did not have any disagreements with management throughout the process. In fact, it's important for me to point out that the management team was extremely well prepared for the audit. We received all of our client requests timely, and all of our questions and inquiries were answered very promptly and very accurately, demonstrating a strong command of the books and records by the management team. We are not aware of any consultation that the management team had with any other accountants, and what that's really referring to is opinion shopping. So if there was a matter that management disagreed with us on from an accounting treatment standpoint, and they reached out to another entity to get their opinion on it, we would be required to disclose that to the committee as part of our responsibilities. And again, we are not aware of any such consultations. There were no other significant issues discussed with management in order for us to be in a position to render our opinion. And as I mentioned, we didn't have any disagreements and we did not have any difficulties encountered in performing the audit. There are no other significant findings or issues that we need to disclose to you as part of our responsibilities. As I mentioned earlier, the audit report included within the draft combining financial statements is an unmodified or clean report. And if this information was to be contained in any other public document, such as an annual report, which I know we do issue an annual report around the December timeframe, we reviewed that document in its entirety to ensure that the I'm going to take a brief pause and see, does anyone have any questions with regards to the required communications? Hearing none, then on the next page, just important to just point out some of the quality of accounting practices. So the accounting policies of the system are disclosed in note 2 of the combining financial statements, and there were no significant changes to report this year. And in addition, within the combining financial statements, there are certain judgments and estimates. And as part of our procedures, we review the methodologies that make up those judgments and estimates and make sure that those methodologies are appropriate and consistent. And if there were any changes to the methodologies, we assess whether or not those changes made sense in light of the business of the system. We're not aware of any major changes, and we concurred with management's methodologies and estimates included within the financial statements and did not propose any adjustments with regards to those estimates. I mentioned the disclosures were complete and accurate, and there were no other matters from an accounting policies perspective that you need to be aware of as part of our audit procedures. So, Namika went through the highlights of the combining financial statements, but if we turn to the draft of the financial statements, which should be a separate document that you guys have, the one thing that I want to point out is the opinion. And the opinion is a couple of pages in, and one thing to note is, as I mentioned, this is an unmodified or clean opinion. But if you were to compare the format of this opinion to last year's opinion, you would note some differences. And that's because professional standards warranted a change in how we present our opinion. So it's still an unmodified opinion, but some of the geography is different. So for instance, the opinion paragraph itself in the past used to actually be the last paragraph of this letter. And now this year, because of the change, it's actually moved up to the first paragraph of the letter. So we issue our opinion right in the first paragraph. And then there's additional information included within the auditor's opinion that speak to both management's and our responsibilities with regards to assessing going concern. I just point this out because I want to make sure the committee is aware that this is a little bit different than what we've seen in prior years. It's fully compliant with professional standards and again, represents an unmodified or clean opinion. So with that, that concludes my formal remarks with regards to our presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have based upon their respective reviews of the documents that were provided.
Any questions? Well, I guess I'd just like to commend everyone for the terrific job that everyone's done. A big job, the audit, Mika, your team, all of it. So, looks to me again like a terrific job by everyone involved and a good, smooth transition from Bob to Namika. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions about the audit itself, the next item of business is actually a resolution to recommend to the authorities, board of directors, and the water board to accept the independent auditor's report on the financial statements. And I would note that the resolution does note that both the auditor's report and the financial statements can be amended to reflect non-material changes that are acceptable to both the comptroller and the water board. I would ask that that resolution be moved.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll ask for a vote. Mr. Southwell? Approve. Mr. Bolden? Approve. Mr. Shaw? Approve. And I too approve. That resolution's approved. Thanks, everyone. I have a few more items on the agenda, one resolution item and several more review items. The next resolution item is a review of the audit committee's charter. Pursuant to section 3R of that charter, we're required annually to review and approve our charter. No changes have been proposed to the current charter, and I would therefore, unless anyone has any changes they'd like to propose, ask that someone move that resolution to approve our charter.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a vote on that resolution. Mr. Safla? Approved. Mr. Golden? Approved. Mr. Shaw? Approved. And I too approve. That resolution is approved. The next item on the agenda is a review of our schedule of dates, and that just provides information on the items to be discussed at the annual meetings of the Joint Audit Committee. No changes are proposed in the schedule of dates, and I think you'll see that that schedule is attached for your review and has been circulated. I'd ask if there's any discussion or changes proposed. Note that this is a review item, so we don't need to resolve or change anything. Hearing none. Then final item on the agenda is a review of the Water Board and the Water Authority's financial integrity compliance statements. That's required by Comptroller's Directive 1. This is also a review item, and you'll note that this rather large document, which we see every year, has been attached in the documents that were furnished before the meeting. And as before, for both the Water Board and the Water Authority, there's a long list of hundreds of items and a discussion of which ones are applicable, which is most of them to the Water Board and the Authority, and a discussion of those where we are in compliance and where there are a handful of notations of non-compliance. There's an explanation of why, in our particular circumstances, that is the case. Namita, I don't know if you have anything to add about those items, or if anyone has any questions for either Namita or Omar about them. Hearing none, I note that no vote is required. Any further business before the authority, before the charter committee? If no further business, I'll ask for a resolution to adjourn.
Move.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. Mr. Safla? Approved. Mr. Golden?
I vote to adjourn.
Mr. Shaw? And I too approve. We are hereby adjourned.